Hi guys, welcome to my training. My name is Yuli. I'm a security and privacy architect. For most of my career I was a security guy. I was doing application and IT security, penetration testing, software development, online fraud research, secure cloud architecture, and a bit of DevOps. During my career I worked for Check Point under RSA Security and few other small security vendors. 2 years ago I bumped into privacy. It was a story with a challenge. I was working on a project for my customer. I had to enable access from one tenant account in Microsoft Azure Cloud to another tenant from a different company. In fact, I found a way to do it and it worked great until I decided to revoke the access. Because of a bug, I got an error. Basically, I was not able to terminate trust between two tenant accounts in Microsoft Azure Cloud. Immediately, I contacted the Microsoft security team to help me with that. In response, I got an official email saying that they do not consider this to be an important problem and advised me to open a regular bug report. After filling a regular bug, it can take years to be fixed, so I challenged myself to find another solution. At the time, I read about GDPR and some privacy topics. One of the topics I read was about customer consent. I thought to myself, when I give permission from one tenant to allow access to a second tenant, I am giving my consent. According to GDPR, it should be easy to give and easy to withdraw consent. My next step was to contact Microsoft official data privacy officer and report this problem. DPO forwarded my bug report back to security teams. And in 2 months my bug was fixed. That experience gave me understanding that even the biggest companies have a problem with privacy. It is not easy to understand these privacy requirements and transfer them to actionable plan to make software privacy by design compliant. Being an entrepreneur by nature, I saw this as an opportunity to build a product that helps companies to streamline GDPR compliance. This is how my open source project Data Bunker was born. In this training, I'm not going to talk much about Data Bunker. I'm not going to talk how great it is. Yet I will review some concrete things you can do with it. So, without further ado, let's get started. So, what is data subject? Data subject is basically a person that can be identified. It is an identified person. It can be your customer, your user, your marketing lead. It can be your employee. Important point of GDPR is that data subject is the data owner of his own data. When reading privacy articles, you will see several data subject related terms. The first term is data subject request, DSR. Example, forget me request. The second term is data subject access request, DSAR. When getting DSAR, you need to send customer data back to the data subject or basically to your customer. GDPR identifies two types of companies. The first type of companies are the ones that work directly with the customer. They are end-user facing, they collect personal data, and they have direct relationship with data subject or a customer. These companies are called controllers. Example for controllers are e-commerce company or a bank. The second type of companies are called processors. Processors process data on behalf of controllers. Processor company can be considered controller for its own marketing leads. Example for processor companies are email marketing company or a credit card processing company. One important note. Individuals can bring claims for compensation and damage against both controllers and processors. PII or personal identifiable information. PII is basically any information that helps to identify a user. There are strong identities, for example, username, email address, telephone, social security number. In addition, there are weak identities. It can be a browser information, IP address, or cookie name. Like in triangulation used in mobile networks, a combination of weak identities can lead us to a user. Strong and weak identities are all considered PII. All PII processed in your organization must be treated in secure manner. One of the important topics of GDPR is personal data processing. Companies are processing personal data using various methods. Processing is basically any operation which happens with the data. For example, generating list of customers, storage of data in database, fraud analysis, sending out emails, shredding documents, image processing, saving in audit log, and many other examples. Before you can process personal data, you need to have a legal basis for that. GDPR identifies 6 legal bases to process personal data. The consent legal basis can be in the form of a checkbox displayed on a sign-up page or a checkbox in a cookie banner. Contact legal basis is when you have a contact with a customer. In GDPR, terms of service and privacy policy are treated as contracts. Legal obligation legal basis is when you need to keep a log of payment details. Vital interest legal basis is when processing is necessary to protect someone's life. Public task legal basis is when processing is necessary to perform in public interest, for example, scientific research. Legitimate interest legal basis when processing is necessary, for example, to fight with fraud or for network security. Processing for direct marketing sometimes can be identified as legitimate interest. Before using a legal basis in your business, you better consult with a privacy lawyer. In order to comply with GDPR, companies need to follow 7 key principles when processing personal data. The principle of lawfulness, fairness, and transparency tells the following. Companies must have a legal basis for personal data processing. Personal data should be used in a fair way, not misleading or unexpected or unlawful. Companies must be clear, open, and honest with the people from the start about how they will use personal data. Companies must not deceive people when collecting their personal data. The purpose limitation principle tells companies to display clearly what is the purpose of personal data processing from start and do not change it afterward. For accuracy principle, companies must take reasonable steps to ensure that the personal data is accurate and up to date. The integrity and confidentiality principle tells that companies must have a proper security controls to ensure unauthorized and unlawful access is blocked. The accountability principle is the following. Companies must have appropriate measures and records in place to be able to demonstrate compliance. For example, by demonstrating and implementing privacy by design compliance. The storage limitation principle tells that companies must not keep personal data for longer than they need it. The data minimization principle tells that data must be adequate, relevant, and limited to what is actually required by companies. One of the results of data minimization is that companies must remove personal data for expired trial users or users who left the company's services. The topic of data minimization becomes important for US companies too. CPRA or California Privacy Right Act of 2020 has data minimization. In the following example, you can see an email received by a job candidate from GitHub. GitHub tells the candidate that his personal data will be removed in 30 days, or the candidate can leave his details by pressing Keep My Data. Deutsche Wohnen SE is a German property company. Deutsche Wohnen had to take their chance in court and pay a hefty lawyer's fee in order to avoid 14.5 million fine imposed by German data protection authorities. The fine was over retention of personal data, GDPR Article 5. Deutsche Wohnen is €11 billion company. When creating business processes, privacy by design is one of the most important topics of personal data protection and GDPR. You should make user privacy to be your one of top priorities. You need to address privacy risk in proactive manner. Security controls must be in place to ensure unauthorized access is blocked. Your customers should not have to do anything to ensure their data is safe. You have to integrate data protection into your processing activities and business practices. All stakeholders, partners, and co-processors must be vetted, audited, and open to external verification. My team maintains an open source project I created. It's called Data Bunker. This tool was built to serve as a backbone for privacy by design architecture, and you can simply use it. I will cover Data Bunker in the following slides. 1&1, a big hosting company, has been fined for €9.5 million. It failed to put sufficient technical and organizational measures in place to protect customer data in its call centers. Callers to its call center could obtain customer information by simply providing customer name and date of birth, which meant that customer personal information was not properly protected. It broke GDPR Article 32. Companies are obligated to take appropriate technical and organizational measures to systematically protect the processing of personal data. GDPR introduced a number of user rights. Users have the right to be informed about how their personal data is used. For that, you need to update privacy policy and terms of service. Right of access gives your users the right to obtain a copy of their personal data as well as other supplementary information. Right of rectification gives your customers the right to fix incorrect or incomplete personal data about themselves. Right to erasure or right to forget me. To date, everyone already knows what is it. Your customers have the right to restrict processing of their personal data. Right of data portability gives your customers possibility to obtain and reuse their data with another service provider. Basically, you need to return to your user a JSON file with their data. Right to object. Your users have the right to file an objection. The last user right is right related to automated decision making, including profiling. One of the examples here is that your users can request you to do human intervention when processing is done in automatic manner, for example, by AI. Pseudonymization is a term coined by GDPR. It is a hot topic. Pseudonymization is a secure solution to process personal data in many situations. GDPR identifies pseudonymization as following. Pseudonymization means the processing of personal data in such a manner that personal data can no longer be attributed to a specific data subject, without the use of additional information, provided that such additional information is kept separately and is subject to technical and organizational measures to ensure that personal data are not attributed to identified or identifiable natural person. So how to make it work? You can use your personal data and store it in Data Bunker. Data Bunker encrypts personal data and generates random user's token. This token is basically pseudonymized user identity. You can use it as a user identity in your application database, in your service logs, or for cross-border data transfer. There are no specific requirements for storing logs except for generic ones. Organizations must implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to protect and secure personal data that organizations process. Saving in log file is one of the processing operations. When saving in log file, limit personal data to what is actually required. Another important aspect of log storage is compliance with user forget me request. When getting forget me request, you need to remove user details from the log files too. It can be a challenging task that can be simplified. According to GDPR, you have 1 month to respond to user forget me request. So if your log retention period is just 1 month, you do not have to do any additional steps. The second method is to use pseudonymized user identity instead of storing user details and clear text in log files. You can use the user token generated by Data Bunker as identity in your log files for that. Additional method is to encrypt personal data stored in log files. The last alternative is to manually remove log entries or build a script for that. Due to government requirements, for example, to keep details of payment transactions for 5 or 10 years, you can keep payment logs unchanged as long as required by law. Cross-border personal data transfer is an extremely important aspect of GDPR, especially with the invalidation of Privacy Shield framework. This framework was used by 5,000 American companies to conduct transatlantic trade in compliance with EU data protection rules. The reason behind this decision is the current level of protection given to personal data under US law cannot be considered to be the same level provided by European Union. This is largely due to US surveillance programs. Today you have a number of solutions to do cross-border transfer. The first is to use standard contractual clauses, also known as model clauses. It means your users need to approve for their personal data to be processed abroad, for example in the US. Another solution is to use European Data Protection Board guidelines published in 2020. This document details a number of technical solutions for cross-border transfer. One of the methods is to use pseudonymization covered above. Reporting a breach. In case of a breach, a company has 72 hours to report to the authorities. Sometimes you need to report to individual users, to your customers. Consult with your lawyers before. If your customer personal data is encrypted, like the one stored at data bunker, and the threat actor cannot decipher the customer details, you are in a good state. Twitter has been fined for 450,000 euros due to the late breach notification. It breaks GDPR Article 33. Organizations have 72 hours to report breach notifications. The Twitter was not fined for the data breach itself. You see cookie consent pop-up or cookie consent banner almost on any website these days. You cannot set tracking or advertising or other non-essential cookies to a website visitor before your visitor gives his explicit consent. Your site visitors must be able to block non-essential cookies. Some companies go to another route, as GitHub has done. They completely remove all third-party JavaScript files from their website. As a result, they have no third-party cookies. They have only required cookies for the website to work. In this case, you do not need to show any cookie banner. Displaying a cookie banner with only one button like accept or got it is not legal. It does not give your users a free choice to reject unnecessary cookies. Google has been fined 100 million euros for that. This is advanced cookie settings screen. As you see, advertising and analytics categories are disabled by default here. This is a GDPR requirement. Here is another example of GDPR fines. Google has been fined for £44 million. Google has not obtained clear consent from users to process user data for ads personalization. Option to personalize ads was pre-ticked when creating a user account, which didn't respect the GDPR rules. Here is a small comparison table between Californian CCPA and GDPR. You see common topics like right to be deleted, right of access, extraterritorial scope. CCPA is intended for bigger companies that process personal data of Californian citizens, while GDPR is for all companies that process data of European customers, for small and for big companies. In addition, in CCPA, companies can sell customer data unless the customer tells to stop it. In GDPR, you need to ask your customer before the sale. Now I will show you a small demo of open source Data Bunker tool. It is available online at demo.databunker.org website. So this is a login page for Data Bunker. When you call Data Bunker API to create a user record, Data Bunker knows how to process your request and extract user email address, phone number, login name, and build a secure hash-based search index for user records. With an email address, your customer can sign in to the product. Your customer can view his profile details, open a forget me request, initiate personal information change or rectification request, and manage privacy agreements. Basically, Data Bunker resolves the GDPR user right of access for you and automates most of other user privacy requests. In your setup, you can block direct customer access to Data Bunker. Only your data privacy officer will be able to look for user details and execute other user requests. In case of user login attempt, the product generates a one-time random access code and sends the code by email or by SMS to a customer. Now I'm using a test user account. The test account is configured with a phone number of 4x4. I enter the captcha code and click on Login. Access code for the test account is the same as the phone number and it is 4x4. The real customer will get access code by SMS or by email. On this page, your customer can change his profile details. Depending on configuration, on the user profile schema, you can configure what fields can be changed by users directly and what fields will require data privacy officer approval. Now I'm changing my username and I'm allowed to do that. I can also click on Forget Me request. The data privacy officer will get a notification by email and will have to approve it or reject it. In addition to user profile, you can easily store additional user application data. For example, I store shipping information here. You have a simple API to work with additional user application records stored in Data Bunker. In My Agreements page, your user can see all his agreements or consents. Your customer can withdraw consent given previously. According to configuration, some operations will require data privacy officer approval. My Requests screen shows a list of all user requests that require admin approval. For example, the profile change or forget me requests are listed here. The history screen shows an access trail of all operations with the user profiles. It includes read events or change events. You can easily see what fields were changed in the user profile. Now I will sign in using my root token. In the demo server, the root token is capitalized word demo. In the user requests screen, you have a list of all user outstanding requests that admin has to approve or reject. In the processing settings screen, the admin can create processing operations and configure legal basis for them. The audit screen lists a history of all operations with the user records. Thank you guys for joining this training. If you need help setting up open source version of Data Bunker or you need a professional version, you are welcome to talk with me. You can use my contact details. In addition, we have recently released a new tool to scan any website for GDPR violations. It is available for free at privacybunker.io.